like to call the meeting to order. We could stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, want to have the roll call?
Kevin Raymond,
Here.
Michael Cox,
Here.
Peter Hansel,
Here.
Jamie Girardi,
Here.
Roberta Sides, Chris Williams,
Here.
Chairman Charles Gray.
Here. Okay, you want to read the proof of publication?
The items were published in the Tampa Bay Times on June 10, 2019 and June 21st, 2019.
Okay, for anybody who's going to give testimony, if you'll stand, raise your right hand and be sworn, please. You're going to come up and speak.
Do you swear affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth, so help you God?
All right, thank you. We have minutes to approve? I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Okay, I would like to welcome everybody this morning. We are the Planning Commission. We appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. We meet twice monthly. We serve as a local planning agency and we hold public hearings and transmit to the Board of County Commissioners recommendations on comprehensive plan amendments, land development code amendments, land development code amendments, rezonings, and conditional use requests. Planning Commission is the final decision-making body for special exceptions, certain appeals, variance requests, and certain alternative standard requests. However, final decisions may be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. If anyone is in opposition to any comprehensive plan amendment, land development code amendment, rezoning, conditional use, or any item where the Planning Commission transmits a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, it's important for you to attend the appropriate Board of County Commission meeting. For those of you who are not familiar with the format of our meetings, the procedures are as follows. We have continuances, and it's been our custom to approve a request for continuance either from the staff or from the applicant unless there are extenuating circumstances. We also have consent. That's where items on the agenda have not received any objections, letters of objection, or objections from the staff. Those items remain on consent agenda. We'll go through those one at a time. Anything that's on consent that you would like to be heard today, when I read it off, please raise your hand. We'll pull it from consent for consideration. And then we have the regular items, which would be heard, each of them. So applicants will have 3 minutes to make their presentation, and then questioners or respondents would have 3 minutes to state their concerns, and then following the statement of those concerns, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond. If there has been a request by anybody, and I think I only have one, to receive extra time, at least 24 hours prior to this meeting. It's subject to the approval of this board and me, and I think I've only had one which was approved. I think that was for Hot Hobby, right? So before we start the regular meeting, we do open the meeting to public comment for anything that is not on the agenda or not designed to be heard today. So if you're here for something other than what's on the agenda, please feel free to come forward, state your name and address and your concern, and we'll see if we can deal with it today. Is there anybody that is here for something not on the agenda? Okay, I don't see anything. Denise, anything I missed? Okay.
Good afternoon, Planning Commission members. Denise Hernandez, Planning and Development. First item is a continuance item, PC1. It's PDD 19-7419 in the name of Gulf Coast Estates. Change in zoning from C2 General Commercial to a C3 Commercial Light Manufacturing District. The applicant has requested a continuance to the August 9th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 in Dade City.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of continuing PC1?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Following item PC2 is PDD 19-7410 in the name of MHC Forest Lake Estates, MH LLC. It's for a change in zoning from AC Agricultural District to an RMH Mobile Home District. This comes to you with a recommendation of approval.
All right, is there anyone here, is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? Okay.
Item PC3 is PDD 19-7413 in the name of Carmel Friendship Baptist Church, Inc. It's a change in zoning from an MPUD Master Plan Unit Development District to a C1 Neighborhood Commercial District. This comes to you with a recommendation of approval.
Is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? Okay, no objections.
Following item is PC4, PDD 19-7418 in the name of Dwight and Joyce Hopkins Revocable Trust. This is for a change in zoning from an AC Agricultural and C2 General Commercial Districts to a C2 General Commercial District. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval.
All right, and is the applicant present? Anyone here to object? See no objections?
Item PC5 is PDD 19-CU01 BB Agritourism LLC, St. Joe Ranch LLC for an amusement park in an AC district. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions.
The applicant's present? Anyone here to object? Okay, we're going to pull that one. We have some questioners.
Item PC6, believe should be pulled as well because they go together. So PDD 19-CU39, PC6 also.
Okay.
Move on to item PC7, PDD 19-CU41 in the name of KW Realty Fund 3 LLC and others, Starkey Ranch Hart Pine Business Park. It's for the sale of alcoholic beverages, beer and wine only, on premises consumption in conjunction with the operation of a retail center in a master plan unit development district. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions.
All right, and the applicant's present? Anyone here to object? I see no objections.
Item PC8, PDD 19-CU42 in the name of ABC Liquors, Inc., ABC Fine Wine and Spirits, for the sale of alcoholic beverages, beer, wine, and liquor, package sales, and on-premises consumption in conjunction with the operation of a liquor store in a master plan unit development district. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions.
The applicant's here. Anyone to object?
So, Mr. Chairman, I have a question on that one.
Okay, so we'll pull that one. That is PC 8.
Following item is PC9, PDD 19-CU43 in the name of ANT of Florida, LLC, Bubba's 33, for the sale of alcoholic beverages, beer, wine, and liquor, on-premises consumption in conjunction with the operation of a restaurant in a master plan unit development district. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions.
The applicant's present. Okay, anyone here to object? See no objections.
Following and last item on your consent agenda is PDD 19-CU44 in the name of Pasco Ranch, Inc., Walk-Ons, Bistro, and Bar for the sale of alcoholic beverages, beer, wine, and liquor on premises consumption in conjunction with the operation of a restaurant with outside seating and service of alcoholic beverages on a patio in a master plan unit development district. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions.
All right, is the applicant here? Anyone here to object? See no objections?
That's the end of the consent agenda.
Okay, so I believe we have pulled from consent PC 6, PC 7, and PC 8, was it?
5, 6,
I think it was 5,
5,
6,
5, 6, and 8. Okay, 5, 6, and 8. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Would you like to move on to P11, or do you want me to answer the question on PC 8? How would you like to?
We can probably get rid of PC8 pretty quick. I just had a quick question on it.
Okay.
Okay.
So, let me get to this. So it's for the sale of alcoholic beverages, but I'm assuming that the reason this is here is for the consumption
Because of the
portion it.
consumption,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
So basically, the way it works typically, the sale of alcoholic beverages, the package sales, if you are giving samples of less than 1 ounce, that's covered. However, ABC does like larger test tastings and things like that. That's why we're here today. And I do also want to say to the Planning Commission and to the folks behind me that Planning and Development Department, through the Ordinance Development Team, we are working on an amendment to the Land Development Code so that you will not see on-premises consumption either in the future.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Mike?
I'll move for approval.
Okay. So we have a motion, and Pete, you have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so that takes care of 8.
At the pleasure of the Planning Commission, did you want me to go through PC 5 and 6 now, or do you want to do
Let's just
P11?
Go ahead and do 11.
Go do 11? Okay. Let me. Sorry. Sorry.
Erica Wayland's Planning and Development. Item P11, PDD 191121 is a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment in the name of CPAL 1904, Central Pasco Employment Village Text Amendment. I do have changes to the sub-area policy since the agenda was published on SIRE, and I would like to pass out those changes. The only change that was made was reference to the State Road 52 right-of-way requirements and the stormwater requirements that are no longer applicable. We had talked to FDOT, and it was assured that we could take it out with the sub-area policy because it was no more applicable to the site. On June 20th, 2019, the local planning agency held a public hearing on the proposed comprehensive plan and text amendment. And the comprehensive plan amendment was continued to today, July 11th, 2019. And also on March 12, 2019, the Board of County Commissioners, I'm just going to give a little bit of background, directed the Planning and Development Department to expedite a staff-initiated comprehensive plan text amendment to the Central Pasco Employment Village sub-area policies. The staff-initiated comprehensive plan text amendment was a result from a previously submitted comprehensive plan map and text amendment.
Sorry.
The intention of the staff-initiated text amendment to the CP sub-area policies is to facilitate the process of development within the CPEV by eliminating and modifying development provisions. These provisions and modifications include eliminating the requirement for 1 ECMPD for the entire sub-area, and limiting the financial plan requirements, removing provisions regarding the rural transition area north of State Road 52, and addressing the use of well and septic tanks in low-density areas when utilities are not available. The subject property is located on State Road 52 and west of Bellamy Brothers and east of Aaron Cutoff. Again, these are the provisions as to why we moved forward with the Stafford Comprehensive Plan Amendment. And in addition, there are minor updates to the CPEV sub-area policies to remove requirements that have already been met or that are no longer applicable. For example, the widening provision by FDOT and the stormwater management plan are things that are no longer applicable because there are engineering plans that already, and stormwater plans that already address those design features. In addition to the sub-area policy, we are now incorporating the master plan graphic as a map. And this just goes to show that the different land uses are laid out. Here's the sub-area map indicating the EC flue. And again, the CPEV sub-area policies require mixed-use development with an emphasis on employment centers. And by eliminating the requirement of one ECM PUD, it will allow for individual property owners to proceed with the development without having to coordinate the financial planning with other property owners within the CPEV. Hence, the one financial plan would not be feasible anymore. And with that, Planning and Development recommends approval and to find the comprehensive plan amendment consistent with the comprehensive plan and to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners. And you guys will be acting as a local planning agency. Thank you.
You?
Sure. Can I ask a question?
Sure, absolutely.
Erica, in section E1, well, section E is Central Pasco Employment Village Public Facility Requirement. Paragraph 2 of that contains a statement, Central Pasco Employment Village development is limited to the level that will generate 604 net external PM peak hour trip.
Excuse me, Chairman. Sorry to interrupt. I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have my mic.
Sorry.
How to do it.
Sorry about that. The first sentence of the second paragraph contains a statement, Central Pasco Employment Village development is limited to the level that will generate 604 net external PM peak hour trips. There was language struck after it that allowed you to get out of that if there was determination that 52 met an acceptable level of service. I'm not understanding why to me, we either should have left the whole paragraph in so that you could get out of that cap, or we should have just struck it entirely. I'm not understanding why you only left the first sentence.
I'm going to look at the sub-area policy that I handed and I didn't leave a copy for myself.
Oh,
Erica.
There's some up here.
Erica, there's some up here. Somewhere.
so I'll start by asking, why was the rest of the paragraph struck?
The rest of the paragraph was struck because in discussions with the MPO, they had said that it was viable that I could strike that language, but to keep the 604 net internal peak hour trips.
Okay, what was their rationale for striking the second part of it, though?
They didn't want to strike the 604 in case they said it was because at the time that this was created, that the number was important, and that's as to why I kept that number in.
I get, okay, my concern is leaving in the first sentence without having the rest of it, because the rest of it says, okay, because otherwise they're just stuck at the 604 trips, okay? Like there's no way for them to get out of it. And the intent of the rest of that sentence, paragraph was that you could get out of it if a determination was made that the segment of 52 from Bellamy to Old Pasco meets the adopted level of service.
Okay, so we're gonna have to strike that first sentence to me. That way we can strike the entire thing, the entire paragraph.
I mean, I guess I need to understand what was because this is news to me that you were even doing. I mean, this is not what I thought was happening with this text amendment. I didn't think you guys were touching any of the traffic stuff, so.
No, this was language I thought that could have been applicable. So when I took the language to the MPO, they had said that I could strike that language. If not, then we can leave it in. But that would have to be an answer from from MPO that I had discussions with.
Is anybody from MPO here to answer why this was struck? Well, to me, either the entire thing needs to be struck, or you need to leave the entire thing in. I don't understand the thought process of only leaving in the first sentence. Because you're basically saying you're capped at 604 trips and there's no way you can get out of it. That's what that language says.
Nectarios Pitos with Planning and Development. I'm looking at the proposed amendment, and it seems innocuous if we just leave the language as it stands and not delete it from the text.
Yeah, if you leave it the way it is, it shows that there's a concern about the number of trips, but it also says you can get out of it if there's a. Now, there is a statement about including things in the long-term concurrency management system, which we don't have anymore, so that may have been why some of that was struck, but I guess is the thought process that you guys are just going to look at traffic as each MPD comes in through timing and phasing now?
Yes.
Then you should just strike the whole thing.
Okay.
And just rely on the paragraph above it says that you're going to time development to make sure the infrastructure's there and meets our level of service standards. So that supports your ability to time and phase it under timing and phasing. If that's the intent, then you can just strike the entire second paragraph.
Yeah, it'd be the normal MPUD process, so timing and phasing is part of that.
Then you never should have left the first sentence in of the second paragraph.
Noted. We'll take it out.
Okay.
You're going to take the whole thing out.
Yeah,
The entire second paragraph, starting with Central Pasco employment.
that's what I had said, to strike the first sentence, that would make sense.
Can we get a motion to do that before we
Yeah.
move on with anything else?
Is that the only thing?
That's the only issue I have, or question I have.
Do we need to
I have
receive
a
and file this?
Pardon? Well, I was only going to ask them to make a motion on that one change, and then we can move on to whatever the next issue is.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to remove the first sentence of, sorry, I forgot the
E1,
E1.
second paragraph.
Second paragraph in
Second
E1.
paragraph.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes. Go ahead.
So, as I understand it, and I have a question from kind of a similar thing to traffic with the schools. So as I understand it, before it was going to come in as a whole MPUD. And so when that happens, I get to look at the number of residences and make a determination on what we need for school sites. So I understand why we want to change it so that we can have individual property owners come and develop, and I understand that. But here's my fear. So I need an answer on how to protect the school's interest, because I can see what's going to happen. An individual property owner is going to come in, and they have whoever, D.R. Orton, wants to build 200 homes. Okay, so they come in, get their MPD for 200 homes, and they say, I'm too small for a school. 200 homes get built. The next property owner comes in and wants to build 500 homes. Okay, I'm too small for a school. They built 500 homes. Before I know it, I got 2,000 homes out there and no school site because everybody's too small. So the question is, how can I ensure that as this progresses, I can get school sites without people saying, hey, I'm too small, sorry, can't help you. You know, and the other fear is, so I let two people go by and develop, and then I try to ding the third guy when I do need a school, and that guy says, well, you didn't get it from those guys. So I'm just trying to think through how, and maybe it's like E1, where we have something that says, you know, you don't go beyond. I'm trying to think through what that looks like to make sure we get what we need.
Right. So we have to take into account that the employment center future land use still governs the entire site, even though you'll have multiple MPUDs. And that requires a proportionality of land uses to be distributed throughout the Central Pasco Employment Village area Then you have also the Central Pasco Employment Village Area Plan, which is also making prescriptions with regard to land use, as we saw in the previous slide. And third, I would say that this is pretty much like every other sort of development scenario in the county where individual properties can come in at their time for an MPUD. So it doesn't create a special situation, but it does enable us to track how much residential is happening within the EC flu. It does enable us to track how much residential is happening within CPEV so that we can accurately assess the thresholds that would trigger a school requirement. Because EC requires that kind of tracking area-wide.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
I understand that. But what happens when the first two guys come in and I don't need a school, and the third guy comes in, or whoever, you know, whatever, and he's got 500 homes and he triggers, I need a school now, but he says, hey, too small. If you got a school site, you're going to take a third of my development. I don't want to do that. So how does that work?
They're subject to the EC flu proportions. So if other property owners are coming close to that threshold and the third property owner comes in and he's hitting that threshold, well, you would have to take action at that time. But the EC flu is establishing those proportions to track the overall intensity of residential land use within.
So Terry, I don't think the EC flu, it has percentages, but it doesn't say how much of it needs to be schools.
Right.
Right. It's based on the percentage of residential.
I understand that, but I think Mr. Williams' point is that it says how much you can have residential you have, but it doesn't say how many schools you need to accommodate. So
Right.
I think the gist of his concern is previously there was a financial plan requirement for this, sort of like Connected City and Pasadena Hills, and as part of that financial plan, they identified a funding source and locations for school sites. And so there was at least in the case of Pasadena Hills, they actually pay a surcharge and in Connected City to help make sure those sites get reserved. And so that's, since you're eliminating the financial plan requirement here, I'm not sure there is a mechanism to do that here. Now, the simple solution would be you designate the school sites now. I mean, you actually put them on that plan you showed up there. I mean, you could just designate where they're going, you do a level of service analysis now, and you designate on that plan where the school sites will be. Because then he doesn't have to worry about where's my school site. Because I think the thought was when this was originally approved that the financial plan would address the school sites. And now that there won't be one.
In the original financial plan, I'm not familiar with it. In the original financial plan, did it identify within which category the school sites would locate?
Well, no, it actually, but if you look at what's struck from the financial plan requirements, one of the things that was supposed to be addressed in the financial plan was school site acreage.
Yes.
Okay, so it was never determined.
No.
But there was a plan, the requirement to do a financial plan to determine it. That's, I think, Mr. Williams' point.
And also talked about co-location with parks and things like that.
So the question is, if you're not going to have a financial plan, how are you going to ensure, you can make the same argument for parks too. I mean, how are you going to ensure those things are properly located? I mean,
Yeah.
there is a way to solve it, maybe, because my understanding is the main reason you're doing this is because you have a piece that wants to come in where one of the office commercial pieces wants to come in, right?
Right.
So And the office commercial piece is not going to trigger a need for parks in schools, right? I'm assuming. So, I mean, you could add a requirement to the Sudbury policies that prior to the first residential MPUD, that the location of the required school and park, the acreage and location of the required school and park sites will be identified on the this larger master plan.
And I'd be fine with that. Because again, yeah, I don't want to, if somebody's coming in for an office or
Yeah.
industrial, I don't have an issue with that at all, so.
So, section.
Good point.
We can add it under letter E, Central Pasco Employment Village Public Facility Requirements. And just make that caveat into that.
I mean, right where the paragraph was that we deleted, that one?
Yeah, you can make it number 3.
E2 or part of E1?
Yeah, well, I guess it would be E3,
Okay.
since the current E3 and 4 are being deleted. We could just substitute and add some language there that basically identifies that when the first residential MPD comes in, we make sure that the acreage and the park sites are identified.
So what language are we suggesting?
So I think it would be, so if I can rephrase what I said, prior to the approval of the first ECMPUD or MPUD containing residential entitlements, the CPV master plan shall be amended to identify the location and acreage of any required school or county park sites. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sounds fine to me.
I say county park sites because that's different than neighborhood parks. We don't usually would require that level of specificity for a neighborhood park.
And I'll make that as a motion that we insert that language.
I think you should take public comment
Okay.
before, just to make sure you, because that is a pretty significant change. We gotta
Okay.
make sure that there's nobody opposed to that.
I'll withdraw my motion for now.
So will that happen as the applications come in?
Well, if it's a officer,
No, not if it's
If a residential, what it would require is,
specifying resident.
before you get a residential MPD in here, this map you're seeing would have to be amended to say where the schools and parks are going to be. Assuming there are any required, I mean, we'd have to
Yeah.
do a level of service analysis to
Right.
figure out whether it triggers a high school or an elementary school or middle school, but there are 4,500 units approved,
which is a lot.
and that's probably enough to trigger at least an elementary school, right?
Oh, at least.
Okay.
I mean, if it's, and I don't remember the breakdown, but that potentially could be all three.
And would that be affected if you had a, 55 and over development?
Oh, yeah, that affects that.
Make sure that
And
be
we
mentioned,
take
yeah.
that out if that's the case.
Because we're just saying residential, we're not.
Yeah, so we, again, as David said, we would analyze it based on the number of units that are being, and type of units that are being projected.
So you would set aside a proportion on the amount of space, depending on how many units there are.
Yes, yes.
As they come in. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Overall, I have a concern about this whole request. The county, back when this was originally approved, took the approach of, instead of doing these 50, 100, 500 acre developments, that it would be better if we planned areas. And this came about back then. Pasadena Hills came out where it was more smart growth. In fact, I think the county even won an award from the Regional Planning Council for either this or Pasadena Hill because of smart of smart planning, right? This is on the same notion as that. It's concerning to me that now, we have done a whole area, this is how we want to see this thing develop, and now we're seeing a property owner wanting to pull out of that and go back the way we used to do it. And that's very concerning to me. The other thing that's concerning to me is that we don't really know what's going to be built there because we don't have the MPUD ordinance sitting in front of us to tell us what is allowed there or not allowed there. So it feels like, you know, we're just moving the ball a little bit further down the road or towards the goal line, and at some point they come in with MPUD ordinance that may or may not be a good plan overall. I personally think it's a much better situation if that whole area is planned and it's adhered to than going back the way we used to do it and piecemealing. Just some comments to start off.
Chris, what do you?
Well, I mean, I agree to some, I mean, I agree with that. And then I think of the practicality, you know, if I'm trying to put myself in one of those landowners. And so I'm kind of, you know, I'm not necessarily opposed to the particular amendment, but I'm just trying to guard against, again, if they come in and they're planning this whole area, then they have to take care of things like schools and parks, and they have to make sure that's all master plan. And I like that. But I also understand, you know, how do you get those group of parcel owners together to do that? I don't know how feasible that is or not.
But, you know, my point to that is that they've already done that.
Yes, I agree.
You know, they did it, and they agreed to it, and there's a plan out there in place.
Yep.
And I don't know this to be fact, but I believe that the current applicant is maybe a new owner there to a piece of property. But the fact is, he knew what he was buying, or she knew what they were buying, or what they were part of. So,
Well, and we just had this issue in Pasadena Hills where somebody bought a piece and all of a sudden they were objecting to a school site because they kind of ignored that when they bought that piece of property. So I agree with you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just a point of clarification. So this particular text amendment that's before the Planning Commission is actually a county-initiated text amendment to the sub-area policy for Central Pasco Employment Village because the Board of County Commissioners requested us to make it easier, I think was the exact terms that they used in their meeting, for development to take place within CPEV. So the amendments that are before the Planning Commission today are an attempt to liberalize the requirements so that development can actually happen within CPEV. I think it was generally recognized that with the single MPUD governing the entire site and with the multiplicity of property owners within it, that it was found to be difficult to come together to develop the entire property or the entire planning area at once.
so then I have a question then. If the BCC wants this to be done, then why is it before us? If they've already made the decision that it needs to be done, then why is it before us?
Okay, let me address that. First of all, legally, you're the local planning agency, so it has to come to you. Okay, so that's one thing. Secondly, is the board's direction was more general in nature, which is, he's right, make it easier. And it was specifically directed at things like remove the requirement for the financial plan and did it be one MPUD? There's other stuff, like the stuff that Mr. Williams has brought up and that I brought up, that the board never said, waive all that stuff, okay?
Right.
So there's other more specific things that are being addressed in here that the board never gave any direction to handle. The staff is changing at the same time. So Mr. Williams made a good point. Hey, if you're gonna eliminate the financial plan requirement, what are you doing about schools and parks? So I don't think the board said ignore schools and parks when they said expedite this. So that's the job of the LPA, is to make sure things weren't missed as part of that expedited process. So Mr. Williams is doing the job of the LPA and making sure things don't get
Right.
missed.
And it was a text amendment, too.
Pardon me?
It was a text amendment, not any map amendments.
Right, it's a text amendment. So that's your job, is, yes, there may have been some general policy guidance by the board, but it doesn't mean they dealt with every specificity that the LPA would typically look at.
But, you know, in my mind, by removing the financial plans, by removing a lot of these restrictions off this, we're going back to the way it was before, without having smart growth. And I really have a problem with that.
Because easier doesn't necessarily mean better.
I guess it depends on who's looking at it.
That's right, well, you're right. So it comes down to perspective. What player you are.
But to Mr. Williams' specific comment, I don't think there was any board direction to ignore schools and parks, and most of the board direction was focused on the non-residential part of this,
Right.
not the residential, and so I do believe that Mr. Williams' comment is appropriate to address, and I don't think it's inconsistent with the board's direction.
I agree.
Okay. Anything else from up here, from anybody? All right, anything from the public?
George Southworth. I'm the landowner that initially proposed that we change, that we go with individual MPUDs so that we could develop the industrial piece at the corner of State Road 52 and Bellamy Brothers Road. And the reason for doing so is I did buy the property after the process was started, but I was active in the process. And I was active in promoting the fact that the financial plan, the group of landowners would go together and continue to produce that. Unfortunately, we do have a number of landowners that have acquired the property whose goals and objectives and wants or needs or desires aren't what the original landowners were. But our point is we need to do something with the property. It's a perfect place to create jobs for the county. All right, it's not related to residential rooftops, but we're not going back to the beginning because we do have a plan and we're not changing the overall plan. We're just saying that the individual units can now be developed by individual property owners within the same plan. And I think the idea to address the schools is a great idea. Parks, it's a great idea. And I have other properties within that are in those areas that if I ever choose to develop them that way, I'm happy to participate in that. But I think the changes that you've suggested are good changes. There's a way to address it, but we're not starting from scratch with just everybody out there like the Wild Wild West saying, I want to build homes on this corner, which should be a commercial corner. You know, there is a plan, and we're sticking with the plan and the appropriate land uses that were identified and approved by the county in that plan. We're just saying that now we can move forward one landowner at a time, or two, or three, whoever wants to work together. Otherwise, we're just stopped dead in our tracks. Thank you.
All right, next. What's your name and address, please?
Andy Joe Scaglione, 3802 Ehrlich Road. I am one of the owners within this in PUD. And when I bought the property, I knew what was in here. I was comfortable with it, now I wouldn't have bought it. And it gave certain protections. Some of the points you made have been excellent. This has gone, when the board mandated for the fast track on this, they did not know that there was serious concerns among other property owners. All they were hearing from was Mr. Southward. Mr. Papello owns the property 133 acres next to my property. I have 133 acres. And Mr. Bessette has 425 across the street. I think we need to slow this down. This is 2,400 acres on Highway 52. I mean, this is a very, very valuable property, and this is moving way too quick. There's too many questions. And let's look at also some of these heavy industrial uses, because that should not be allowed here. Let's not make the same mistakes that you go down where Starkey Ranch is, and years ago, those heavy industrial uses didn't stick out, but now they stick out like a sore thumb. And that's what 52 is going to be 54, and not too long. And let's move slow on this. Let's get it right. And let's also look at the uses and also some of the concerns you have. I think this is way too fast trying to approve this today. Thank you very much for your time and all your time volunteering.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm Joe Papello at Gator Creek Ranch, right next to Andy. I think there's some concern with you guys. I'm hearing you. It's moving awful fast. We understand it's a mid-industrial zoning, but what are the uses? And as far as future planning, I agree with you guys. We need to have a little better idea of who's going to give up the school and who's going to make the park. I got the creek, so the park's there, I guess, which is fine. But I think we need to slow down, understand, and I think all the owners should have the right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, can
Yes.
you state his address, please?
Yes.
That's the record.
Into the microphone.
It's 26-130 State Road 52. Is that correct?
That was a question mark.
I've had to have it on my phone to know it. It's the gate. I think it's 26-130 State Road 52.
Third gate on the left.
That's the twice one.
Good afternoon. Terry Schrader, 31414 Pasco Road. Mr. Chairman, appreciate you allowing us to have a meeting with staff, postponing the meeting 2 weeks ago, which we were able to do. We met with Erica and 2 other staff members. Terry was not available at that particular meeting, so after we at our meeting, we got some great progress. The only big concern we have is this terminology, industrial. We thought we had something worked out. After the fact, Terry came back and he explained to us prior to the meeting today their concerns. We still are a little uneasy with that. That's our biggest concern, is the industrial. So if we can address that at some point in fashion, if it, I don't want to delay this any longer than it's necessary, but I think everybody agrees it needs to get done right the first time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Reale, 401 East Jackson Street, Tampa, Florida 33602. I represent one of the property owners, and what I would like to say today is that we would object to a change based on schools and parks. Of course, we're not objecting to the concurrency needs, but to change it here without being able to figure out what that would look like and how we would estimate what those current future needs would be, so that the first applicant would be only burdened with the proper amount. I think that's unclear and not something that we can effectively do here at the meeting. So at the same time...
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Isn't your client the low-density residential piece?
Yes.
Well, I guess I would ask Mr. Williams, the condition that we talked about, if it was tied to the first MPD within the medium or high areas, would you be okay with that? I don't know how many units the low density can do. I mean, does anybody know how many units you can do max in that low density area?
Yeah, I believe it's 2 dwelling units per acre. Is that right?
Well, I don't know how many acres that is. That's what I'm asking.
We don't have that calculation right now, but we can find out.
I guess my question for Mr. Williams is, if the low density unit count was low enough, would you be okay tying that trigger to when the first MPD comes in the medium or high area?
Yeah, I'd want to see what that unit number was.
Okay, can staff figure that out while we're...
Yes, we'll figure it out right now.
If that was the change, would your client object at that point?
Well, the concern here would just be estimating what that future load would be. Now,
No, what I'm saying is the trigger for when the school and park sites would be identified wouldn't be until an MPUD came in the medium or high density residential area, not the low. Assuming the unit count's low enough, I don't know, but I'm asking if that change were made to the proposed condition, would your client still object?
I wouldn't want to agree to anything without being able to look at this and see how it would affect any potential site plans that we would have. I mean, I understand that it should be a simple answer, but I just don't want to commit to anything. And if the council thinks that a change is needed, we would just recommend voting no and having this move along rather than to delay and try and rehash these things.
Voting no on everything?
Yes, sending it to the board.
Okay, that's an unusual request, but okay.
Yeah. We just want to keep this moving. Thank you.
Thanks.
Cynthia Spidell, Ardura Group, 4921 Memorial Highway, and I have been sworn. I just wanted to address some of the concerns. I represent 3KS Family Limited Partnership, Mr. Southworth, who spoke earlier. This is a comp plan amendment. This isn't a zoning. This just gives people the right to come in and ask for zoning. There are no changes to the maps being proposed. Staff has smartly included this area map that was already approved by the board, and I don't think anybody's asking to deviate from that. We're in support of Mr. Williams' language suggestions about the residential, and I think David's idea to make it hooked in the medium or the high is smart, because that's probably where it belongs. However, I respect the affected parties' right to object to that. But this is a comp plan amendment. This is not a zoning. This just gives people the right to come back with a zoning. Right now, nobody can do anything. So, this got approved in 2008. It's 2019, and I think, all I can ask is that you allow people to at least come back with a zoning to develop the properties.
So Cynthia, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is that okay, Mr. Chair? Yes. The concern over the industrial, I think, I suspect that some of that could be alleviated if, in the phrase where it talks about type of development, it says corporate business park, target primary business, and it says industrial uses. Would your client object if that got changed to light industrial uses?
As long as there isn't a target industry out there that's going to cross that line.
Well, see, targeted primary business is a different category. So
Okay.
you can be targeted primary business and still be heavy, but I view this as three different things: corporate business park,
Yeah, we're okay
targeted
with
primary
that.
business, and
Yeah.
then industrial. So
Yes.
I think if you added the word light before industrial, it probably would address some of the concerns that we're hearing.
My client just said okay. So yes, we are okay with that.
Staff okay with that? I'm not sure that TC allows heavy industrial uses anyway unless
No.
they're target primary businesses.
The EC flu is very detailed.
Right, it would be the EC flu that we would look at.
Right, well, the ECMPD, as far as my reading of it, it does not allow any heavy industrial uses that are not target primary businesses.
The ECMPUD?
Correct.
Yes, right.
So, but the concern is, I think, if I'm reading between the lines with the affected third parties, is we're now saying it can be either ECMPUD or MPUD. So there's no such restriction in MPUD on heavy industrial. So given that change, I'm wondering whether we need to change the comp plan to say, in terms of type of development, put the word light in front of industrial. Am I making sense?
Which part of the submarine policy are you in?
There's a table in 3, okay? It's got type of development. It's got 3 uses listed there: corporate business park,
Yes.
targeted primary business, industrial uses. And my suggestion is to add the word light before industrial. Because I don't think EC allows any heavy industrial uses that are not targeted primary businesses. If you look at the ECMPUD criteria. And I suspect if you add the word light, it would address some of the concerns that we've heard today. So I'm asking if staff has any objection to that.
As long as it's qualified targeted industries that,
No, okay. That's not what I'm saying. The type of development that's listed there, there's 3 things listed, right?
yes.
Corporate business park, and maybe it would help if we numbered them too, so it's clear these are 3 different things. So my suggestion would be to put 1, corporate business park, 2, targeted primary business, 3, light industrial uses. And I'm asking if staff would have any objection to that change. I'm seeing some heads nod in the audience, like that would help address some of their concerns.
David, I wouldn't be supportive of doing it any other way. I think I'd be concerned if we just said industrial uses, because I think it leaves the door open to heavy industrial. I think it's better to specify what we're talking about. And because it says targeted primary businesses, what does that mean exactly?
So there's a list of uses in the ECMPUD section of the code that says, but they're generally businesses that manufacture products that bring in, they sell their products outside of the county. In other words, they're the types of businesses that our PDC typically tries to recruit to the county because they're manufacturing some product that is sold throughout the United States, for example.
The world.
Throughout the world. So like a Mettler Toledo. Okay, a Mettler Toledo manufactures food equipment that they sell throughout the world. That's a targeted primary business.
Is that?
But it's also a form of manufacturing operation. I don't think Mettler Toledo is heavy industrial, but you could have something that would technically meet the definition of heavy industrial, but it's in a building, and I don't think that if you're worried about something like a concrete batch plant, that would never be a targeted primary business. Okay. There's a list in the code, and we could pull it out, but I don't have it memorized. But it's all I can say is that if you read the list, it would be all businesses that you'd love to see in Pasco County. They're not obnoxious, smoke-producing, dust-producing businesses. But because some of them do some fairly intense manufacturing within their buildings, they could technically meet the definition of heavy industrial.
So could you say targeted primary businesses such as are identified in X, Y, Z?
Yeah, I mean, we could put targeted primary businesses, there's a code section that let me pull out the code
I'd
section.
just like to have them identified because I don't want heavy industrial there personally. I just think it's not a good place.
Does staff have the code section that lists them?
And also, if you look at the definition of light industry, there's things listed there that I would not want to see there.
Yeah.
And I understand that it's more towards the targeted industry list, but it doesn't say that. And, a concern that I have is that you have to educate me. You have to remember I'm just a lowly financial planner. I don't have the level of expertise that the attorneys and the engineers and such in the room have. But why can't we see the MPUD at the same time as this text amendment? Because here's what concerns me. We approved the text amendment. The train has left the station. You're never going to get it back in the station because we've already approved the text amendment, and it's on the track. Now we come in with an ordinance, MPUD, saying what can be done and here. Well, what if we don't agree with what's in there?
Okay, so a couple things. In this particular case, they can't even get an MPUD submitted for your review until this text amendment is made. There's one of the requirements in the current text is that it be a one MPUD for the entire area. And I understand you'd like to see the MPUD for the entire area, but if you wanted to see an MPUD that says the specific list of uses for one of the areas, they couldn't even submit that currently today. So, but I also say you have to remember the difference in comp plan and zoning, which is comp plan is giving you a more general range of potential uses. And I understand the fear with heavy industrial, and that's why we're trying to tighten that up a little bit. But I don't think you're ever going to see a comp plan list that has the level of specificity that you're looking for, because that's only in a zoning. So you have the right when that zoning comes through, if you don't like something in the list, to say, I don't think that's compatible with this area. Now, but I get the concern the residents or that the neighbors are raising, which is they don't want anything that even sounds like it could be heavy industrial in this list, because that opens the door for a whole range of uses that could be noxious, et cetera. Light industrial is different though. Light industrial, yes, there may be a few uses in light industrial that you may think are not compatible, but as a category, it's light industrial is one of the things that EC allows. I mean, that was its intent, was to allow light industrial uses. So light industrial is allowed today under EC. It's not, the thing, what I'm hearing, the concern is they don't want anything that sounds like it could be heavy industrial being allowed in there, which is a very different list of uses.
Well, my concern is that it's more targeted industries than it is
Okay, so let me give you an example. of something-
non-targeted.
Yeah, let me give you something that EC allows that's light industrial that isn't a target industry, which is light industrial flex space. Okay, so the county actually has a need for light industrial flex space in the county, and it's just flex space that various light industrial users might use, but it's not a specific target industry. So EC was not trying to preclude somebody from bringing in a light industrial flex space into, but staff is pulling up the list here. So can you zoom that in so they can see the title of what this is? Okay, so okay, so we can probably skip over the corporate business park part, because I don't think anybody here is going to object to a corporate business park. Okay, so let's go down to, okay, where does the list of either light industrial or target primary
Right here,
business
right here. Letter B, industrial.
There you go.
And then from there, it defines the types of industrial uses within the EC MPUD.
So could we tie this targeted primary business to that part of the code?
Yes, you can.
Then we know.
I think that's what we're heading to, is to somehow clarify that
And then add
the table
light
that David
to
was
the
referencing.
industrial uses.
Well, what you'd put in here as, you could put, yeah, you put light, because that's all that section of the code allows.
Right.
Okay. Then you could say, as defined in section 5, where's the first part of this whole section of list of uses? Right there. So it'd be 522, what is this, 522?
Go back to the beginning of the ordinance. 22.5, point D.
Yeah, that's it, 522.5D,
D. Yeah.
right?
And that would be we would want to identify the EC MPUD land uses.
So that's the targeted list.
Yeah, so you would say, as described in section 522.5D of the Land Development Code.
And then the word light in front of support,
Light in front of industrial.
industrial, I mean, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that would be, to me, that would be the thing I think would make sense.
What was the code section again?
522.5, point D, point 1, point E.
Well, that's only the target industries,
It's
or?
the industrial part that we're seeing here in front of us.
Well, what I'm suggesting though is just make it D, because that also describes corporate business park. I mean, you might as well just, it's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
That doesn't change.
So it's 522.5D?
Yes.
Okay. Is the well, I guess we are the
Yeah, we're the
applicant.
applicant. So that was our, we didn't want to leave the light industrial untethered to the ECM PUD. So if we're referencing the ECM PUD here in this table, I think we're good with that.
Okay, so we're gonna add the word light in front of industrial and then say as, somewhere in this little bubble, we're gonna say as described in section 522.5D of the LDC.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we get a motion for that change before we move to anything else?
I'll move for approval of that.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, to answer the question that was posed previously by David regarding the low-density areas. So I don't have an accurate assessment of the acreage because the shapes are a little irregular on the area map there. However, by rough calculation, it's about 290 to 300 acres. So at 2 dwelling units per gross acre, comes to about 150.
How many units?
150, right? Did I do the math right?
No, that didn't sound right. How many acres did you say it was?
300.
200?
300. Divided
That's
by 2.
the, on either side of the green color, is that the one you're looking at?
Am I doing that correctly?
You said there was 200 acres? I didn't, I missed.
300 acres.
300 acres? So 2 units an acre, wouldn't that be 600 units?
600 units. Oh, yep, you're right. I did it backwards.
2 units per acre, 600 acres is, I mean, 300 acres is
Yes.
600 units.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Try to do
so,
math in your head.
so now I guess I'll pose the question back to Mr. Williams. Do you have any, if they could do up to 600 units in there, do you have an issue with?
Might, depends on what, I mean, potentially that's over 100 elementary kids. That's not counting middle and high. So, you know, it just depends on what my schools are at surrounding that. So I'd be hesitant to.
How many homes did you say? 200?
600.
Well, 600 in that area, the total number allowed for the entire thing is 4,500.
Yeah, 45. How important is the dwellings in that area? How important is rooftops? Or
Pardon me?
Is that important? Let me see how I can word this. Is the owners of the property committed to building rooftops out there? Or would they feel that the more profit would be obtained, profit's the wrong word to use, would it be more advantageous for them to put light industry out there in the entire area and
Okay,
forget
so,
rooftops?
yeah, let me try to answer that because Mr. Peters wasn't here when this was approved.
Yeah, go ahead.
This project was approved primarily to generate employment. Okay, however, the property owners that were trying to get it entitled were unsure whether there would be a market for that much employment in this area of the county. And so they wanted the ability to do some residential and retail uses as well. And that makes sense to have a mixed-use project because the people who work there also need a place to live and shop too. So I'd say it's important in the sense that it ensures that it's a mixed-use project. However, the county's main goal for this area was to designate an area for employment. The residential just, I would call it a necessary evil that came along with it, if that answers your question.
Yeah, and I would say, in my opinion, remove the necessary evil and just make it all industry out there. You know, because 52 is going to be widened between Suncoast and I-75 anyway. And just south of that area is a number of residents that could seek employment in that northern part of the area, or you could bring people from Hernando County down. So that's just my simple.
Well, that would be a pretty substantial change to this plan. If you
Right.
just said there was no longer going to be any residential, and
Okay.
that probably affects property owners who are not here today. So my only concern with that is this plan was negotiated, you know, there was a lot of time, non-negotiation that went into who would get residential in this area, who would get retail, who would get light industrial, and you would effectively be taking away some of what they bargained for. And so I'm not saying it can't happen, I'm just saying that I'd want to, if that was the goal of the planning commission, we'd want to start over. because that's not what they all negotiated.
I mean, it's also an idea of the Central Pasco Employment Village to have people live near where they work, so.
Is there a map that shows this subjected property on top of this master plan? I mean, I know it's generally the 52 and Bellamy Brothers
You mean
Road
like an
area.
aerial?
Well, I'm just trying to, on this map that's here now, can we see which piece of property it actually affects?
Pretty much all pasture land right now.
No, I understand that, but, so right now, there's a plan for the whole 24 acres. So how many acres are coming out of that 2,400?
I don't understand the question, I'm sorry.
There's none.
I probably don't understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, so
Because
there's,
you're a financial planner.
there's nobody proposing to remove themselves from this plan. At one point, there was. That's what started this effort, was
To pull out
we
some.
got an application from 2 different properties that wanted to pull out of it.
Yep.
Okay, which staff didn't want because they liked the plan. And so they said, we need to do something to tweak this plan to make it easier for these property owners to develop in accordance with the plan. That was the reason we're here today. So currently, nobody's proposing to pull themselves out of this plan. Now, if we don't approve these text amendments, we probably will start getting applications for people to pull themselves out of the plan. I'm just being honest with you.
Okay.
But I think I know what your question is, and the EC MPUD that we would like to, for staff to consider, and we would like to come back to you to consider, has to be consistent with this. So in trying to work with staff, we did send it to Erica and Terry to look at, and they did come back and confirm that the EC MPUD plan that we would like to proceed with is consistent with this. I mean, you know,
Okay,
it's kind of hard to see the
I guess maybe the better way to
lines.
ask this is what area of this map will the MPUD that we'll be seeing at some point
Yeah.
cover?
Do I press this button here? Oh. Oh, gosh, see? I knew I did something wrong. Oh. Okay, right there,
Just the corner?
just the corner. Yes,
Inclu-
133
including the
acres.
purple?
It is the purple and the red.
The purple and the red, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
It goes up to that Vision Road. It's bounded by the Vision Road to the west and the Vision Road to the south up to Bellamy.
Okay, I just wondered how far west, I guess, it
Yeah, it goes to that
comes.
Vision Road,
That Vision, okay.
approximately just east of that Vision Road.
Okay, so we probably need to figure out what to do with Mr. Williams. Was there any more public comment?
You do with me.
Kevin Reale again, 401 East Jackson Street, Tampa, Florida. Just to respond to your last comment, the idea of trying to make this work as the whole plan is the reason that we're delayed. And to sort of clarify my point earlier, trying to get all the properties owners together to have one MPUD to show you all is the reason that this hasn't worked for the last decade. And trying to get everyone to agree to get past this stage is delaying things again, and we're just seeing the same problem. It's a well-intentioned plan, and we like the plan, but the act to make everyone work together is just inhibiting anyone from making any progress. So to my point earlier, our position is that we either approve it the way that it's been negotiated to this point, or vote no and move forward, just so that we can keep this process moving, because trying to get everyone to agree doesn't seem to be getting us anywhere.
You said our position, who are you speaking for?
Outlaw Ridge, which is the property owner to the southwest corner there, is the low-density
You're not speaking
residential.
for the group, you're speaking for...
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay.
So, Mr. Williams had a proposed addition to the sub-area policies dealing with schools and parks. I guess we need to take action on that, because it sounds like, well, the only concern we heard was one of the property owner in he owns part of the low-density residential area. And so we need to decide whether, I didn't hear any major objection to the concepts, but the question is whether you tie it to the first MPUD, the first residential MPUD, or do you tie it to the first residential MPUD in the medium and high-density areas? And that's really up to the planning commission, so.
Yeah. Well, I would want to tie it to the first residential MPUD at this point.
The beauty of this whole plan is that there's a financial plan supposed to be done over all of it,
Right.
so it all works.
Right.
But part of this is removing the financial plan.
Correct.
And that's the biggest concern that I have, is that you're back to impact fees and the like that
Well, I
haven't
will,
traditionally paid for themselves.
I will say that the biggest concern in terms of infrastructure probably is schools and parks, for the reasons that Mr. Williams said, is that there's no one property owner that ever wants to take the school or the park. That's the issue.
Right.
Roads and utilities generally tend to work themselves out, because if they don't have road and utility access, they can't develop anyway. I mean, so we have other LDC requirements that ensure that there's adequate road and utility facilities. So the road and utility components of the plan is probably something we could live without, but I agree with Mr. Williams, the fact that we could have a problem in schools and parks, though, if we don't know where those are going to be located, because he's absolutely right, that it's not just a school issue, it's a park issue too, where no one landowner wants to take the high school or the large park, where it requires some level of collaboration on a project this size to identify where the schools and parks are, and we discovered this from Pasadena Hills. I mean, there was a reason in Pasadena Hills where we got together and all the property owners decided where that massive super park would be. And same thing with the schools in Pasadena Hills, because we knew there was no one landowner that would want to take them all. So it is a legitimate concern, and
David, where would we insert that residential requirement in here into this?
well, I think Mr. Williams' motion to add it, to make it, to have this plan be amended to show the location of the schools and parks before the first residential MPD cures the concern. But we've heard an objection from the guy who's in the low density part, because he knows he'll be caught by that. Okay, and that's why I asked.
But he's also arguing to keep the plan in place that says you ought to do a.
Well, he's also saying he doesn't want to coordinate with the other people he'd have to coordinate with. So that's the issue. It doesn't affect the non-residential people at all, which is why Cynthia's not objecting to it.
Right, that's right.
Did we get that motion, Chris?
No, he withdrew it.
He reversed it. He pulled it.
Well, I withdrew it just because so we could hear public comment, but I'm going to make the motion again.
Well, why don't you just do that?
I will. So I make a motion to add the same language. We can, hopefully you have record of it, but if we need to rehash it, we can. But for section E3, indicate
I believe the motion was that prior to the first
the
MPD.
approval of the first residential.
Yeah, prior to the approval of the first PCMPD or MPD that contains residential entitlements, the CPV master plan shall be amended to show the location and acreage of any required school and park sites. Is it something like that?
Yes.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I make that as motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
So,
Any further discussion for that motion?
so under discussion, so what about transit? I mean, so I see there's a notation here about transit-oriented design features when appropriate, but
So,
what
yeah.
got scratched out here was there being a plan for transit. So is it the same situation? That gets kicked down the road until the next person comes in and...
Well, let me say a couple things about transit for this area. Unlike the 54 corridor and the I-75 corridor and some other, what I'll call the more urban areas of the county, there are no regional transit plans. There may be some local transit that serves this area, but there's no regional transit facilities that we are currently envisioning that would come to this area. So, that being said, we do have local bus service that likely could serve this area, but that's typically addressed at the time of site plan approval for the commercial or office entitlements that come in. So the MPUD could address how they provide transit infrastructure for their MPUD. So I'm not, and we have a standard condition in all of our MPDs that says you have to work with our PCPT to have appropriate transit infrastructure. So I don't think, if this is an area where we're planning for regional transit, I would absolutely agree with you that we may need more than a bus shelter. But in this particular area, my understanding of the future transit plans of the region, there's no regional transit plan for this.
But originally, there was a call for a master transit plan for the whole thing.
Correct.
And that's being stricken out of this. And it's going back to piecemeal.
I get that. And what I'm saying is, the reason I wouldn't personally be concerned with it is because I believe the MPD process and site plan process are sufficient to deal with the type of transit that would be appropriate for this area. I wouldn't make that same statement if we were talking about Wiregrass or, the Mitchell project up at more of the urbanized areas where we are planning for more heavy transit-oriented development. This is not in one of those areas. Am I saying this right, Mr. Pitos?
Yes, I would agree with that.
So I don't think, yes, I think there could be some local transit serving this area, but I believe that the MPD process and the site plan process are sufficient to make sure that infrastructure is in place. It doesn't require, when Connected City came in, their financial plan did have a transit component to it. Okay, so, but it's right off the interstate.
Because it was part of a bigger.
Yeah, it's part of a bigger regional system that may be coming up into Connected City.
And originally, when this came in, they viewed themselves as a bigger project, and they needed it.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you that there's a possibility it could become an attractor, but it's kind of in the middle of, I wouldn't say the middle of nowhere, but it's.
Well, today it is.
Today.
I understand
Today
that, but I'm even looking at the transit plans that, in my mind, that are 40 years out. Okay, the ones that are, even the pie and sky plans of T-Barda don't have any facilities going to this area.
Okay.
So that would be my concern with trying to force, I don't know that it's, I think part of the reason that it got approved as mixed use is because we wanted to make sure that people lived, worked, and shopped in this, it didn't have to go get on a bus and go to Tampa to work. That was the whole idea of this, was it was supposed to be its own entity.
No, I understand that, but reality is that you're not going to govern where people want to live. I mean, this isn't, it's not factory housing.
In a perfect world,
you gotta live there.
in a perfect world, we'd bring regional transit here too, but there's limited funds, and I'm just being honest with you that.
No, I get it. Yeah.
All the plans I've seen for transit don't include this particular, for regional transit, don't include this property.
All right, any further discussion on the motion? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, so now you also need to take action on the rest of the proposed amendment.
The amended motion.
Okay, you've made 3 motions so far. You changed the transportation stuff to strike that paragraph. You clarified the type of development and referred to the code for the corporate business park, targeted primary business and industrial use. And then you added Mr. Williams' new sub-area policy about schools and parks. But you still there's other changes that are being made that you need to take action on.
All right. Okay, so I'd like to hear a motion to approve the plan as now amended, and any discussion on that motion. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so do we have any other discussion on the plan that we have not previously discussed? Okay, so all in favor of the motions?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
By the way, I'd like to congratulate you all, because this is the first real planning you've done in a while.
There you go. Now, what I'm thinking is, where's Rich Canella when? You can tell him I said that.
BCC probably won't listen to it, but, you know.
You were truly operating as a planning commission today, so I'm proud of you.
Thank you all for the work.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
All right.
5-minute break?
Any need for a break before I dig deep?
Mr.
We're taking deep.
Mr. Hansel wants a break.
You want to take a break? Okay,
Go ahead.
let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay, thank you.
It almost
thank
made it worse by the way you screamed in the background. Yeah.
I didn't mean to steal it. I have one that looks just like it, but it's the same.
You've already panicked enough. and she's screaming.
Thanks. She managed to keep running the camera.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna help you guys, but I'll be filming this whole thing.
That's right. Okay, call the meeting to order.
Right. Good afternoon, Planning Commission members. Denise Hernandez, Planning and Development. Today I'm going to, at this point, go over PDD 19 CU01, which is an amusement park, a conditional use for an amusement park in an AC agricultural district, and PDD 19 CU39, which is the sale and service of alcoholic beverages in conjunction with the operation of an amusement park in an AC district. Those are your items PC5 and PC6, so those will be heard together. The subject applications are located in north central Pasco County on the north side of St. Joe Road, approximately 800 feet east of Bellamy Brothers Boulevard, and on the east side of Bellamy Brothers Boulevard, approximately 1,400 feet north of Bent Fork Road. Throughout the presentation, I will be at times referring to the western parcel and to the eastern parcel, or I'll say the western portion or the eastern portion. So I just want to show you that we're looking at two parcels. This is the western parcel, this is the eastern parcel. Individually, the western parcel is 58.46 acres and the eastern parcel is 59.86 acres. Currently, the western parcel is undeveloped with areas of dense vegetation and mature tree canopy. The eastern parcel contains the Tree Hoppers Aerial Adventure Park, which consists of zipline courses, various rope bridge obstacle courses, concession areas, and the gift and pro shop. And that was approved under conditional use petition 12-17 back in 2012 by the Board of County Commissioners. Additionally, this parcel, which is, again, the eastern parcel, hosts an annual fall festival and Halloween haunted house, which has live actor-based theater and other related features and activities under temporary use permits in accordance with the Land Development Code 530.9. The surrounding zonings include an expired MPUD, which is formerly known as Saran Ranch to the north and to the east. Was also known as Triaga at one point. And parcels that are zoned AC and AR to the west and to the south. Surrounding future land use is AG, AGR, and Res 1, as shown in the map. You've got AG to AGR to the north and to the east, and AG to the south and Res 1 to the south. And recreation uses, which is what's being proposed with this application, may be permitted in any future land use classification as long as it's consistent with the applicable goals, policies, and objectives of the comprehensive plan. Access to the site is from St. Joe Road. Only farm use and access, and emergency vehicle access is being proposed on Bellamy Brothers. The applicant has agreed to limit access, and this has been memorialized in your conditions number 2 and 3. So the applicants are proposing a winter play park over the western parcel. It will consist of a snow tubing hill, snow play area, and other related features and activities. It will operate a maximum of 120 days a year, 2 to 7 days per week, depending on the season. Hours of operation are Sunday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Friday and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. At no time will the winter park operate on the same days as the Fall Festival or Halloween Haunted House. The applicants propose a Fall Festival and Halloween Haunted House, which, as I explained, have been approved yearly under temporary use permits under 530.9 of the Land Development Code. The Fall Festival with Halloween Haunted House will include fall-themed attractions, including a Halloween Haunted House with live actor-based theater and other related features and activities which occur both indoors and outdoors. It will operate a maximum of 56 days a year, 2 to 7 days a week. Hours of operation are Sunday through Thursday, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., and on Friday and Saturday, 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. Again, it will not operate on the same day as the Winter Play Park. In terms of CU 1939, which is item P6 for the sale and service of beer and wine for on-premises consumption over the areas generally depicted in the dashed white line, and this is, believe, on your application. It should be attachment 4. The applicants are proposing the sale of beer and wine to be conducted during the days and hours of operation proposed under conditional use 1901 and already currently approved under conditional use 12-17. In accordance with the Land Development Code Section 305, the applicant held a neighborhood meeting on May 28th of 2019. There were 32 residents in attendance at that time. The Planning and Development Department has received 12 letters of no objection, which is your attachment 6 on your packet, and attachment 7 as well. This map that I'm showing you here, which is your attachment 7, shows where the letters of no objection have come from. Those include 4 property owners that are located adjacent to the 70 feet west of the location, 90 feet west of the location, 90 feet south of the location, I apologize. 470 feet southwest, 640 feet southeast, 800 feet southwest, 1,300 feet southwest, 1,600 feet southeast, 0.75 mile north of, and 1.40 miles northwest of the subject site. The proposed conditional use has been reviewed in accordance with the comprehensive plan, future land use policy 1.10.1 compatibility review, which includes evaluation of existing uses of land, zonings, and future land uses, including existing and potential densities and intensities. The proposed use is consistent and compatible with the existing recreational uses of land, the existing Tree Hoppers Aerial Adventure Park, zoning, future land use, densities, and intensities in the area. The review also considers the existing development patterns and approved development in the area, and it was found that it's consistent with the existing pattern of development. The evaluation of existing proposed and anticipated transitions between land uses. The transition between the proposed uses of the site with respect to the surrounding property is effectively and adequately accomplished through the use of buffering, screening, as provided in the conditions of approval. Considering the scale and size of the proposed development, the buffering and screening techniques provided in the conditions of approval when incorporated into the site design will provide an adequate transition between land uses. As conditioned, the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Consideration of environmental and cultural features and community characters. The proposed use of the property will require an analysis of cultural and environmental impacts and mitigation through the preliminary site plan review process. Actually, there's a condition that specifically calls that in your conditions of approval. So as conditioned, the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Appropriate timing based on analysis of availability of adequate public facilities and services, including transportation. The site is served by a county-maintained road, water and sewer facilities. No public facilities are required. The site is served by well and septic and other necessary infrastructure and services. There are no need for additional public facilities at this time. Analysis of consistency with county policies to limit urban sprawl and protect rural neighborhood. The proposed use does not promote urban sprawl. The transition between the proposed use of the site with respect to the surrounding property is effectively and adequately accomplished through the use of buffering and screening, minimizing visual and noise impacts as proposed in the conditions of approval. Analysis of consistency with applicable specific area plans. corridor plans, redevelopment plans, and market area plans. The proposed use is consistent with the Northeast Pasco rural area and the North Market area plan as conditioned. Absent a special showing of need per the future land use appendix, the Northeast Pasco rural area is designed to have a lower density and intensity than other market areas. The subject application proposes very low intensity uses and no density increase on approximately 120 acres, while the provisions of Section 604 of the Land Development Code, which is the Northeast Pasco Rural Protection Overlay District, are not applicable to the subject application. It meets or exceeds the corridor buffering, topographical alteration, fencing, and lighting standards in such section, and creates significantly larger setbacks for the proposed uses than such section requires. Consideration of existing development patterns and approved development in the area. The proposed use is consistent with the existing pattern of development and approved development in the area. The Planning and Development Department recommends approval with conditions as incorporated into your packet. I'm here for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Hernandez? Nothing?
Just a compliment, that graphic you showed with the, where you sort of had all the letters from where people,
Yeah.
I've never seen them before, but that's actually helpful.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks to the applicant. The applicant provided this because we had so many letters of no objection, and the applicant provided this, so it's a very clear showing
I just say
of.
normally we get a stack
Yes.
of things that people object, we have no idea where they live.
So I will not take credit. I'm giving credit to the applicant for
Oh,
that.
I don't know
Who's
who-
right behind me. I hear him laughing.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Denise, do you need this? Mr. Chairman, Clark Hobby, Hobby and Hobby PA, 109 North Brush Street, Tampa, Florida. I have been sworn. That was a pretty extensive overview by Mrs. Hernandez, but I'll go ahead and try to give you a little bit more background. As she pointed out, my client has owned the property that we call the eastern parcel right here for a number of years. I think it's been 7 or 8 years or so. And there was a conditional use permit approved for it that was a subset of what the county calls an amusement park in 2011. And that was specifically for the zip line operation and the climbing facility that's out there now. Those were done pursuant to the comprehensive plan policies that are in AG that specifically allow recreational uses. And there's a section specifically of the comp plan that talks about how recreation is allowed in every future land use, and that while there may be other predominant uses, recreational uses are basically allowed as a subset in any particular land use classification. And the AC zoning district specifically allows for amusement parks, as I noted. Now, after the original conditional use permit was approved on the eastern parcel, Carol Clark, the previous chief planner for the county, and I think it was called the Planning and Development Department. She was the executive administrator, I think, or something like that of her title at the time, issued an opinion that said that they could have a fall festival on that same eastern property, which they've had, and it's called, they have various things that they do out there, including taking people on hay rides and stuff like that, but the main attraction that people are aware of is called Screamageddon. It's part of the fall festival, and it's been very successful, and it's a good draw from around the area. And then, so subsequent to getting that up and operating, the client in the last couple of years has had an idea and been doing research, and there actually is new technology where you can build a snow hill, and provided that the weather stays under 80 degrees, the snow will stay in place for an extended period of time. So my client went ahead and purchased the McLeod 60-acre tract. So both of these are roughly 60-acre tracts. They're very large compared to other areas of the county, and bought this site. And they want to construct and have this winter play park, but the primary purpose of that is to create a snow hill that will be only in operation when we're under 80 degrees. So
While we're asking for a term that may be up to 120 days a year, my suspicion is, based on being born and raised here, it may be only open 30 or 45 days of the year. But I would ask Ms. Hernandez if she can put up on the Elmo. We have some pictures. I'll show you a picture or two. They've got one up in Stone Mountain, Georgia, and it's a bigger facility than we may have here. But this is what they're talking about creating. And they're very, very popular. People really, really enjoy them with their kids. And just as an example of that, the word kind of slipped out to some media sources about 6 or 8 months ago that this might be a possibility. And within 48 hours, there were several 100,000 social media hits with people being intrigued by it. Having said that, because the county calls it an amusement park, when we first did our notices, it caused a big uproar in the Northeast Pasco area because people thought we were going to build a year-round amusement park. So I then, with my client, conducted a series of meetings with the neighbors, the closest neighbors, and there's just about 8 or 9 folks who live directly across Bellamy Brothers. And they were very productive, and I think what we did was we reached a consensus, and the conditions that Denise showed you today and are in your package encapsulate basically what is the effect of a settlement between us, and all those folks ended up supporting the project. And we did a number of things. We have a big setback along Bellamy Brothers. We effectively won't have any access to the park from Bellamy Brothers, so we'll just continue using the access point that we already have down here on St. Joe. There are actually 2. So we're going to build an access through right here. And maybe the biggest thing that we did with them is we wanted, my client wants to be a good neighbor. Now we're trying to do a responsible operation here that's really, for the most part, a family-oriented event. That's what the zip line and the winter play park are primarily family events. And so we wanted to make sure that both visually and from a sound perspective, we weren't causing a problem with the neighbors. So we have agreed in the areas that you see right in here and up here, and then down here on Bellamy Brothers, where you see that thick green line, what you're seeing there is a double row offset at very tight spacing of red cedar trees that when they mature in the next couple of years will basically be impossible to see through. And so it will create a wintergreen feeling for the people who attend the events on the inside, and will create a great visual and sound buffer for the folks who live in the area. As Denise said, we also agreed to days and hours of operation, special setbacks, and a whole host of other conditions, but that's what led you to seeing, I mean, these folks right here, when we first met with them, were very concerned, but with all these conditions, that's what got all of these neighbors on board with what we're trying to do, and these are the folks who live in the area day to day. As I think most of you all know, I have been personally involved in the comprehensive plan policies that led up to the Northeast Pasco rural area since 2005 and the ordinances that were a result of it. And suffice to say, the major intent, the overarching intent of the Northeast Pasco area was really absent a conservation subdivision or a special showing of need to keep density and intensity low in Northeast Pasco. And that's stated as the main way of preserving the rural lifestyle. This use can't be any less dense or less intense. The FAR that applies in the AG future land use classification, I think is 0.23. We're probably operating at a 0.001 here. Very, very low intensity. And the sections of the overlay district that were adopted a couple of years ago only apply to residential subdivisions, but we feel like we're meeting or exceeding all of them with the setbacks and the buffers and the other conditions that we've agreed to. And I can address any comprehensive plan issues you may have based on my knowledge there. And just the last couple of things I'd say, and I've got my client here and we can answer any specific questions, but I would point out for the benefit of the board, or the commission I should say, in addition to the comprehensive plan policies that relate to just Northeast Pasco, there are overarching things that the county's trying to do, one of which is encourage tourism. And there's specific comprehensive plan policies encouraging that. We're trying to create jobs. And this specifically is consistent with both the tourism objectives that the county's trying to fulfill and with some of the recreational needs that the county's trying to fulfill. If you look at the county's master park plan as a for instance, the county acknowledges and the state has acknowledged that recreational uses cannot be met solely by the county and by state agencies, and that we need private recreational providers to step in and fill the needs of our citizens. And so we feel like we're doing that, and from our perspective, we believe the use is really more consistent with what's called an agritourism use, and the legislature adopted a statute 3 years ago that encourages local governments to take large pieces of property like that. The western piece is still in Greenbelt. It still has cows out there and stuff like that. But what it encourages local governments to do is to allow uses like this that supplement the revenue stream so that people can keep Greenbelt and larger chunks of land like this. So we feel like this is something that's consistent with all of the comprehensive plan objectives, including tourism, recreational uses. We've worked very, very hard. We spent 4 or 5 months working with the neighbors who live adjacent, and as you can see, we've gotten almost everybody on board. You may hear from one person who owns the property to the north, and we want to work with them between now and the county commission meeting. We've reached out to them, and before today, we had not had a face-to-face meeting. So I would tell you that, you know, even if we get approved today, my client's objective is to be a good neighbor and work with the Geigers who own the property to the north. And if there are things we can do to reasonably improve the project, to make it better for them, we'll do it. So that's where we are today. I appreciate your support. I think this is a great thing for Northeast Pasco, and we're excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. Does anybody have any questions? Clark first. Okay, is anybody who objects or has questions? Will you please come forward and state your name and address, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Judy Geiger. I live at 16225 Bellamy Brothers Boulevard. It's about 1.5 miles north of this project. I do have some records that I'd like to include, put into the record.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
Motion and
Give us
second.
time.
Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead and give her a copy. Trainee.
Ms. Geiger, have you given a copy of this document to the applicant?
I have not, but I'll be glad to do it.
If you could just ask her.
Well, these documents are Pasco County public records. They are available, but I will do it as courtesy.
Is entitled to see what you're giving to the planning commission, so.
Okay.
Just if you could give.
What I am giving, what we're putting into the record is the 2025 comprehensive plan, goal FLU 2, which is a protection of the rural areas, the entire section. We're also putting into public record the Land Development Code, Chapter 600, the Overlay and Special Districts area, Section 604, which is the Northeast Pasco Rural Protection Overlay District, and a state of Florida. Would you give Mr. Hobby a copy, please? The state of Florida Division of Administrative Hearings, DOAH case number 06-3428GM, which Pasco County was a party to. Okay, I am saying that the application is not consistent with these comprehensive plans, and for these reasons. The stipulated settlement agreement was dated December 6, 2006, based on hearings from the Department of Administrative Hearing. Within that plan, or within that settlement agreement, Pasco County was required to remedy their comprehensive plan and their land development code. The land development code was supposed to be remedied in section FLU 2.1.4, the development of a long-term planning vision. It was supposed to put the remedies in place by December 2008. That has not happened completely. The residential, as Mr. Hobby stated, was done, residential component was done in 2016. There has been no non-residential nor commercial codes put in place according to the stipulated settlement agreement. Therefore, we believe this case is not in compliance and should be denied. And personally, as a member of the community out here, I have watched tree hoppers being built. I have watched Screamageddon. I don't want something like that in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Geiger, can I ask you a question? So you're saying that Pasco hasn't adopted this long-term planning vision. What about the market areas that Pasco County adopted?
I'm just saying that the stipulation agreement has not been adhered to as Pasco County was
Well, no,
directed.
you made two specific comments. You said that policy 2.1.4, development of a long-term planning vision, that we hadn't developed this long-term vision by December 2008. And I'm asking, aren't the urban, aren't the north market area, the east market area, the south market area, the west market area, that appears to me to be a long-term planning vision for the county.
But the code, the land development code, has not addressed the commercial piece.
Okay, but I'll get to that in a second, but you made a statement about policy 2.1.4, developing a long-term vision, so that's not a land development code requirement in policy 2.1.4, right?
2.1.4, let me get to it. I'm not as swift as the rest of you folks on this thing. Okay, 2.1.4 says, Pasco County shall develop a long-term vision by December 2008 for the Northeast Pasco rural area for a planning horizon of at least 50 years. It's saying specifically for the Northeast Pasco rural area.
I understand that, but we've adopted rural market area policies into our comprehensive plan, and my question is, why isn't that a long-term planning vision?
It states here, this is a current comprehensive plan.
And I'm asking you a question, which is...
I cannot answer that.
Okay, and then my other question for you was in 2.1.8. You said that we haven't adopted those standards. Is that what you're saying?
Right. You have not adopted non-residential standards.
Okay, so the way I read the last sentence of that those are only mandatory for office and commercial uses.
To me, this is a commercial use.
Well, staff has classified it as a recreational use.
It's a commercial use. Recreational to me would be he'd provide a place for free. He is making money on this. This is a business. That's commercial.
Okay, I'm going by what staff. Denise, would you classify this as a commercial use, or would you classify this as a recreational use?
It's a commercial recreational use.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm also asking you, if we haven't adopted these standards, how is this application inconsistent with standards we haven't adopted yet?
Well, they've not addressed the you were specifically told to address the Northeast Pasco rural area.
Right, and I can understand if you would make a complaint to the county commission or state land planning agency or somebody that we haven't adopted these standards, but I'm not understanding the argument that this application is inconsistent with standards that we haven't adopted yet.
If it's not, I'm just looking at the comprehensive plan and the land development code applying to Northeast Pasco rural area. You're saying there's additional language in the code or comprehensive plan?
No, what I'm saying is you're asserting that this application is inconsistent with policy 2.1.8. That's what you said.
No, I did not. I said 2.1.4.
Okay, I thought you also mentioned 2.1.8, didn't you?
No, you, sir, you did that.
Okay. Well, that's where you talked about the non-residential design standards. Isn't that in 2.1.8?
No, just from my personal history, I know we did the ordinances of Land Development Code not for residential in 2016. That's the only piece that I've been part of.
Okay, but I'm trying to figure out how this particular application is inconsistent with what you're citing. So 2.1.4 requires the development of long-term planning vision. I'm not understanding whether the county did or didn't do that. I actually think the county did, but even assuming the county didn't, I'm not sure how this application before us could be inconsistent with that policy.
Well, in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, you are, I believe it is inconsistent based on the stipulated settlement agreement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions from up here? All right.
Nancy Hazelwood, 34110, a nice place. I've got a couple of questions. I understand that they will allow corporate parties. I also want to know if they will allow amplified bands on the property. That might have an impact on the neighbors that they might not readily be aware of at this point. Also, I was considering permitted uses. I keep hearing permitted uses, but I don't recall any meeting for the Northeast Rural Area Plan. I know you're talking about market areas. I went to those meetings and they were great, but they were kind of an overview, I thought. We used to have meetings on the rural area. What do you want there? And how's this? And I didn't see any of those. The state settlement agreement did say the county needs to put in permitted uses and commercial for the Northeast rural area, and we just never sat down and had that discussion. And there was a deadline. I also remember the Northeast Pasco group very early on sitting down and saying, well, let's come up with some permitted uses. So we did that. We sent them to the county. Deborah Zampetti got them, if y'all remember her. And then it must have gone into a black hole because we didn't hear anything after that. But we did sit down and try to discuss that for the Northeast rural area. But I would suggest that this application be put on hold until something is done for the Northeast rural area and some of this stuff is gone over with the citizens of the area and looked at. Thank you all very much.
Can I ask a quick question? Has the zip line impacted you at all?
I actually like the zip line.
Okay,
I think it fits. This other stuff has got beer and wine. I'm thinking, oh, they're going to go down the end of the snow hill, have beer and wine with their kids.
Well, what about fall festivals? Do you like those?
They're all right. I've heard some complaints from the neighbors. I've heard about beer cans being thrown out, and it's pretty noisy. So that one, not so much. I think the zip line does fit in.
Okay, so you like the zip line?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's a good recreational family outlet, right?
I'm sorry?
It is a family recreational event that...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that seemed more like it. Also, this amusement park is going to stay an amusement park.
Did you see those pictures up there, the kids sliding down that snow slide?
Yeah, I know, but that is. But still, they're allowing beer and wine. What about if they're allowing bands till 1 a.m., how's that going to affect things? It's just more beer and wine there. They could drop the beer and wine and maybe say they wouldn't do bands. It might make it a lot more presentable to the neighbors.
Well, I've got 2 out of 3 out of you. That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Nancy, where do you live reference to this property?
I live a long way off, but it is in the Northeast rural area, and I'm concerned about the whole thing. I feel if one part of it falls, the other part might fall. So we take an interest.
Okay.
All right, anyone else?
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Hazelwood. Thank you.
Hello, my name is William Geiger. I am the owner of the previous property that is in an expired MPUD, Sarin Ranch. It's the property to the north and the property to the west of this proposed application. I just want to put it on record, I oppose the application. I'm probably the one that it would be most impacted by this. I concur with the lady that just spoke about the zip line. We did not oppose it at all. We felt it was a good fit, and it really doesn't create any adverse conditions for the property, mine or the neighbors. But we do feel the amusement park would probably adversely impact our, the property values and, the setting for the Northeast Pasco. So again, I want to go on record that, we oppose it, and I'll answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, any questions?
Well, I'll ask the same. You like the zip line, correct?
Yes, sir, I do.
You
But
saw the,
I also feel that once that Mr. Williams mentioned about letting the train out of the station, when you approve a amusement park setting, we feel like it would be, there's other uses, other opportunities for them to expand on that.
the issue I have there with the amusement park, I can't find that word in here at all. I found Halloween haunted house, zip line, tubing, snow tubing, which by the way is a lot of fun.
Yes.
I think it's a great recreational too for families. So I'm just trying to find out what do you have against this snow tubing hill? What
Well,
specifically do you have against it?
And just again, what's going to become of it for future? I mean, Screamageddon was added into the zip line domain. They're pretty much all the neighbors oppose that part of the operation. I just don't feel a 40-foot snow hill on the property fits the agenda of what you all put in place for Northeast Pasco. It is a commercial operation, and there's plenty of commercial properties they could put something like this in Pasco.
Is the zip line a commercial operation too?
I would assume it is, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question. Is there any specific, other than you don't want it next door to you, is there any specific code portion of the comp plan that you feel it violates?
I just, the Northeast, rural protection area, I feel that the whole purpose of that plan was to keep it in a scenic, residential, non-commercial. In fact, I don't know of any other commercial alcohol sales in that area.
Isn't there a winery off of 52 in there someplace?
I'm not aware of it.
There is. There's a winery. It's off of 52 though.
Off by that,
Yeah, it's
the one we just talked about.
it's in that area someplace. I've been there once or twice, so. So there is alcohol sales going on there already, right?
If that's true, yes.
Okay.
So,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay.
My address
Anybody
is-
else like to speak?
2501 72nd Street North, St. Petersburg, Florida. Thank you.
My name's Richard Malloy, 7512 Hatteras Drive, Hudson, Florida. I found 5 different properties in Northeast Pasco I'm very interested in. 3 properties that I own and 2 that I lease. I have one question. If the west section is going to be operated, because he brought up the agritourism issue, if that's, the east property is being operated as an agritourism facility, I want to know if the west is also. Because this is very important. I've been working with Lena Juarez, Executive Director of the Florida Agricultural Association, Mary Beth Henry, State Ag Extension, who is the lead on Florida agritourism. The east property currently being operated, you get 2 benefits as agritourism operator. One is that you have protection from liability. It really decreases the cost of your business when you don't have to carry liability insurance. And the second one, and I'm quoting from the Florida statutes, is a local government may not adopt or enforce a local ordinance, regulation, rule, or policy that prohibits, restricts, regulates, or otherwise limits an agritourism facility. You give up your power over it But a subsection's been added this year that brings up, does not limit the powers and duties of a local government to address substantial off-site impacts of agritourism. This has been defined by the state that it means what the neighbors think. It takes the power from the county, puts it back on the neighbors. Like back in the day when you went to do something on your property and they would tell you, get your neighbors to sign off and we'll approve it. So it's back to that again on that. On this east property, one of the main reasons it cannot be an agritourism facility and why they're having people sign liability forms that they're not legally allowed to do is because it can only be on agricultural land under statute 193.461. It doesn't mean what the zoning is. It doesn't mean anything to do with future planning. It all comes down on the tax collector, and when he does an investigation, finds if that is a bona fide farm or not. And that is not listed with the Pasco County as a farm. So they are not entitled to any of these things. Agritourism activity is very specific now with all the updates done in the last 2 years. It lists specific things you're allowed to do on your agritourism facility. You can view or enjoy activities including farming, ranching, historical, cultural, civic, ceremonial, training, and exhibition, or harvest your own activities and attractions, period. That's agritourism. They actually added civic and ceremonial this year so that people do weddings on their farms. The other thing is they've added the words primary and secondary to the statutes. The stream of revenue from your agricultural tourism can only be the secondary stream of revenue. The primary stream of revenue has to be the farm. How that is defined and why I can only do 1 or 2 weddings a year on my farm is because if I make more money on my agritourism, I lose my exemption. It has to be less than the money I make on my farm. The lands that have to remain agricultural and used primarily for bona fide agricultural purposes. And also one other item is that an agritourism activity does not allow the construction of new or additional structures or facilities intended to accommodate members of the general public. This includes snack bars, ticket booths. If you have a barn on your property, sell tickets out of the barn. If you don't, you cannot claim your exemptions as an agritourism business unless you actually have the farm. So I know this, I've learned a lot about you guys today. I saw you with that 20 minutes before we started on this subject. I get a lot more appreciation for your job. But anyway, if the whole thing is, if this whole thing is going to be agritourism, they cannot use that exemption on liability, the one that they have posted on their east farm, east section there. They cannot have those signs up. They're misleading the customers they have there. If somebody gets hurt there, oh, we don't cover you. You signed it, you read it. Well, that's a business for an attorney to talk to anybody that ever got hurt in tree huggers, because they are not entitled to that exemption.
Okay.
But anyway, that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you very much. By the way, just to establish your credentials, are you an attorney that deals in this all the time, or
No.
you're an expert?
I'm not an expert. I do teach some law. I teach international law and admiralty law on occasion.
So what are your credentials? What is your background?
Background? Oh, that's a long one.
Well, just give me a brief synopsis.
Well,
Very
I'm
brief.
dealing with a lot of this type of stuff.
You're not an attorney, so what are
Yeah.
you?
I was a captain with the U.S. Navy. I was charged as part of my job with enforcing the laws that were mine to enforce. I had to interpret the law. I acted as both a defense and a prosecutor and an administrative judge as part of that position. So I'm kind of get a little handle on it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your service, too.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Stephen Gonzalez, and I live at 28736 St. Joe Road, and I have not been sworn in because I wasn't aware that you needed to do that. I'm happy to do that.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth, so help you God?
So I live on St. Joe Road, and I can only speak for myself, but I'm guessing that most of the people the residents who live out there, I moved out there 23 years ago, and we did so because it's quiet and it's rural, and you can see the stars at night. And there's lots of acreage. There aren't, clustered neighborhoods on St. Joe Road. And as the others said, I frankly don't know how tree hoppers, got approved. I didn't go to the meetings. That was my fault. But it doesn't upset that rural nature because it's back in the woods. And I attended the community meeting at the tree hoppers, and that was kind of the business plan. People wanted to get out of the cities and go to a rural setting and do that, the zip lines through the woods. That's fine. How did Screamageddon come about? How did Screamageddon, their Halloween celebration, which I can tell you, I live on the road, I jog up and down the road. It's like having the state fair at the end of your residential road for about 2 months. That kind of traffic, that amount of cars, that amount of people driving up and down the road, that amount of trash on the side of the roads every, Saturday and Sunday. They can tell you the numbers. It's a big crowd, like the Pasco County State Fair.
Excuse me, where do you live in relation to that property?
I am east of this, on the opposite side of the road. I'm exactly halfway between Bellamy Brothers Road and the hump that goes over I-75.
So how far is that?
I think it's 0.75 miles from my house to the corner of St. Joe and Bellamy Brothers.
You said 27?
No. 0.75.
0.7.
I think I clocked it on my car because I run down at the end of the road. So it's less than a mile from it. So that's what we deal with now. I mean, Screamageddon is, it is a short-term deal, but it's, when you look in the paper during Halloween week, it's listed next to, Holla-Scream and the Busch Gardens thing and Screamageddon. It's a pretty big deal for Halloween. So now, and I don't know how that was approved. It obviously was. And at the community meeting, some others were there and they were asking the applicant here, do you have plans to do this? And he said, no, I don't have plans. So when he did tree hoppers, I guess he didn't have a plan for Screamageddon, and tree hoppers got approved, but now we have Screamageddon. So now it's about the snow hill and the artificial snow blowers and the machinery to do that. I mean, it's clearly a commercial setting, and in my humble opinion, it's clearly not the right setting for it. I said at the community meeting, I commend him for the business. I'm a capitalist. I mean, he's hiring young kids. He's making money. It's supply and demand. People want to do these things. It's just in the wrong area. It should be on 301. It should be on US 19. It should be on a commercial business area, because that's what this is, a commercial business. And it's on a road that is a completely quiet, rural, residential road. The only agricultural businesses for the last 24 years since I've been there have been horses and cattle. Quiet, mooing, which kind of adds to the serenity of it.
You haven't heard about the new Green Deal, I guess.
Excuse me? Oh, right. We might be banning all cows.
Right.
But this doesn't fit at all to that rural residential setting. And it's certainly not going to help our property values if we want to, at some point, move to another setting and want to sell it to somebody else who wants to come join this peaceful, rural, quiet setting. Oh, by the way, there's an amusement park right down the street a mile away. As far as the traffic going in and out, yes, when Screamageddon's there's people asking, stopping and asking for directions as they're driving in. But nowadays, think about it. People get their directions off of their phone, off of the GPS and Google Maps. So everybody north of this setting, Brooksville and everywhere north, they're going to come down Lake Iola Road. They're going to get off of that exit down there, north of 52. And they're going to come down Lake Iola Road and come down St. Joe Road right by my house, and go into this place. I mean, this, we're putting, Busch Gardens is an exaggeration, but this is an amusement park. People are paying admission to go into this park, to go down a snow hill a large snow hill slide. I'd like to know where that park in Stone Mountain, Georgia, I think it is that in a quiet, rural, residential neighborhood, or is that in a commercial area? This should be in a commercial area. It should be on US 19 in Pinellas County. It should be on at least 301. Up north on 301, there used to be a golf course up there. There's commercial operations up there. Not St. Joe Road and Bellamy Brothers Road. I just wanted to be on the record with that. And trust me, there are many, many people that I'm surprised aren't here that feel the same way I do. I've talked to them. I mean, I saw on the sign the date of this meeting and, put it on my calendar. My wife and I are here. She feels the same way I do. She's a little more incensed about it than I am, frankly. But this is not the right setting for this snow park. I don't know where any of you live. Do any of you live on Bellamy Brothers Road or Bellamy Brothers or St. Joe?
No, but I'm very familiar with it.
Okay. I don't think you'd like this on the street you live on. I mean, it's literally, when I say Screamageddon, it's like the State Fair. I mean, it's that many cars. And this is going to be a further enhancement, a further amount of amusement park on the end of St. Joe Road.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right, anyone else?
I'm glad I'm on board with that, 100% of more, because there's so much traffic.
Ma'am, you can't speak from the audience like
I
that.
just want to say no, though.
Well, the clerk didn't pick up anything you said, so.
I haven't been sworn in either.
Okay. Raise your right hand and be sworn.
Do you swear affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth, so help you God?
Okay. Christy Geiger, I guess the home address or the business address, 2501 72nd North, St. Petersburg, Florida 33710. I'm like shaking. Sorry. When my husband was up talking before, I'm not as familiar with the land mapping as he is, but I thought it'd be pretty important to actually note how much of the property of the park affects our land.
I'm sorry, honey. You're gonna have to speak to that microphone. Can you please turn around?
5,600 feet. I believe it's all the north and all of the east side. Is that correct? Anyway, it's an entire, almost half of the property line butts up to.
You have a pointer, she can use that. Thank you.
Do you want me to? Well, the Sarin Ranch, so it's all of this and down? Yes. And when he purchased the property back in 2011, it was something that was for investment, entrepreneurship, something that he could pass down to his family or what have you. And when he bought it, it was for the appropriate land uses that it is. And when this other land use comes into play, and it's not appropriate for the area, it completely devalues our investment. I think it was meant for like 5-acre homes for horses for a subdivision. That doesn't fit at all with when we're saying amusement park. Yeah, Tree Hoppers is nice. The Screamageddon I don't think is very nice. It's not pleasant. It's not fitting to the area. The next thing being the snow park. What's next? I mean, does it stop? And we do a lot of stuff on our land. We have hunting leases. I mean, people are out there in the middle of the night and all hours shooting guns. I mean, do you really want to be bumping up to people like trying to have fun with their families and people are out hunting? And this is all appropriations for the land being used right now. I don't know anything about law, but I know the difference between right and wrong, and it's just not right. That's just not where it belongs. And I encourage him to have this business and succeed, just not in that space. I think all of his ideas are great, and I would take my children there, but just not there.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Thank you for coming up. Okay, anyone else? I don't see anyone.
Before Mr. Harvey speaks, the planning commission has concerns about compatibility, I think that's perfectly fine to raise in the context of this proceeding, but I don't think you can find it inconsistent with the comp plan because of plans or land development code regulations that the county has not adopted yet. So I'd ask you to discount that argument entirely. But if you have compatibility concerns, there's other provisions of the comp plan and land development code that you can use if you have a compatibility concern. I would just ask you to discount any argument that somehow it could be inconsistent with the comp plan because of some plan or land development code provision that the county hasn't adopted. There's actually a statutory remedy for somebody to make a complaint if we haven't adopted a land development regulation, and there's a whole process for that. So you should not be taking that into account in your determination.
Okay. So you're referring to the DOA case, and that was brought up.
Right, so there's
how's the DOA case?
So there was a settlement agreement that was entered into in 2006, and it was actually a lawsuit brought by the landowners in the area who didn't like some of the policies that the county had adopted for the Northeast Pasco rural area. And there was a settlement agreement entered into. As part of that, they required certain policies. The policies that required certain policies to be adopted into the comp plan and required certain land development regulations. The policies that were referred to were, the county did adopt some of the land development regulations, which were section 604, which you see here. Right. But they primarily apply to residential. So the point was made that I'm not sure if it's true, but that we hadn't adopted some future vision plan that's required by policy 2.1.4 and policy and some non-residential design standards required by policy 2.1.8. That may be true, but that is not a reason to deny any pending application that's before you. Okay. There's a remedy in the statute for any citizen to file a complaint with the state land planning agency if the county has not adopted some land development regulation required by the code or the settlement agreement. Okay, and that would be the remedy that somebody would need to utilize if we haven't adopted a land development regulation. More importantly, if you had compatibility concerns with this project, there's other comp plan policies that require it to be compatible. So there's no reason to rely on that anyway. So I'm only bringing it up because if you had any kind of compatibility concern, I do not want you to in any way make it based on some lack of the adoption of something that the comp plan may require.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, thank you, David. I mean, I appreciate that, and I think that's probably a very eloquent way of saying that we can't be forced to comply with something that doesn't exist. It's questionable whether some of these policies have already been totally implemented by the county or whether additional policies may be necessary in the land development code, but we can only comply with what the code is today and the specific policies in the comprehensive plan. I'd just answer just a few questions. In my mind, this is a recreational use. Recreation is defined as leisure activities or pursuits, especially those that are conducted outdoors. That does not mean it can't be for pecuniary gain, but it is clearly recreation under the comprehensive plan definition. Just a little bit of background about the Screamageddon activity. Again, the previous planning and zoning administrator determined that we could have a temporary use for those events. What we're doing here today in this process is providing a public forum so that our neighbors can give us input on what they think about those uses, and we can come up with permanent conditions to ensure compatibility for those uses. We could go on operating with a temporary use permit. We could go on having caterers come out to provide alcohol, through the beer and wine. We're not doing that. We're being forthright. We're saying this is where we want to serve the alcohol. We're not going to serve it in other places. These are the setbacks. These are the special buffers we're putting in to make sure that we're doing the right thing by our neighbors. The issue about agritourism, I only raise that because I believe that we have an argument about that. I'm not getting into the argument about whether, we have some kind of liability protection. But moreover, as it relates to this property, we are subjecting ourselves to a conditional use permit and all the conditions. We're not saying that we're not, and matter of fact, we're waiving any right to object to those in the conditions. So we're not claiming that we don't have to comply with them. To the contrary, that's the purpose of these applications. I would agree with David. I sat through many hearings and meetings that went on subsequent to the adoption of the 2007 comprehensive plan that were about market areas, market studies, visioning. We had 2 ULI studies, the second of which, after the market studies had been adopted, pursuant to the previous ULI study, has any numerous of references to the fact that we need to take advantage of tourism, ecotourism. We need to take advantage of the east side of the county's natural beauty. The main reason my client's here looking at this property and not at 19 is that there's a natural roll on it. We don't want to take the roll out. We're not trying to cut the hills down. We want to do a snow park because there is a nice roll on there. There's about a 30-foot, 40-foot drop over on the western side. That's why we're here today. And we believe that we're very much consistent with the comprehensive plan and the intent to keep this area rural, low density, low intensity. We're not seeking more houses or anything like that. And then lastly, I appreciate the fact that some of the neighbors still have objections, and as I told you, I will continue to meet and look forward to meeting with them to try to reach a resolution prior to the board. But there's a reason why on the previous map you saw that substantially all of the neighbors that actually live adjacent to the site have agreed to the conditions and are not objecting to the application. It's because we are doing the right thing by the neighbors. So happy to answer any questions. Other than that, I appreciate your support.
Okay, do we have any questions? Michael? Anyone?
I'll move for approval.
We have a motion. We have a second.
I'll make motion to approve. There we go.
We have a motion and a second. Any
I'll
further
second.
discussion on the motion?
Before we vote, I just want to say, I understand that not everybody would like to have woods in their backyard. Everybody wants to live in rural areas of the county. The applicant's here, and it seems like he's done a lot to protect the buffers. He's protected the access, or actually he's limited the access to only St. Joe Road. I think the applicant's done quite a bit in this case to try to be a good neighbor. So I'm going to support this for that reason.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Denise, is that the end of the agenda? Is there anything else on the agenda?
No, we're done.
Okay.
Well, let me just make clear, because there was actually, this was 2 items, wasn't it?
Yes,
Do you want 2 votes then?
yes, please.
Okay.
So the first one was
vote on what?
Hey, so what did they just, which one did they just vote on?
Five?
PC 5.
You have just voted on PDD 19 CU01, which is PC 5. I also need a vote on PDD 19 CU 39, which is for the sale of alcoholic beverages in conjunction with the use of an amusement park in an AC.
So, in abundance of caution, Mr. Chairman, if there was anybody that wanted to speak uniquely to the alcohol issue, I think you should allow that to happen.
I know that some of them are speaking.
Or anybody who didn't speak specifically to the alcohol issue before, I think they have the right to do it. I just don't want somebody to claim they didn't.
Is there anybody who would like to speak specifically to the alcohol issue that hasn't spoken to the alcohol issue?
See no one rise, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Do you want to move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, please do not leave.
All right.